So we're going to sketch the graph of f prime from f of x. We want to look first where f prime is equal to 0. It's where you see a horizontal tangent line, which occurs at x is equal to -3 and x is equal to 2. So just plot those points -3, 0 and 2, 0 on the f prime graph. Then we want to look at where f prime is greater than 0 or f prime is positive. F prime is positive when f of x is increasing. So looking at your f of x graph, where is the function increasing? So on the interval from -infinity until -3, f is increasing. And then from 2 to infinity, again, f is increasing. So f prime of x is greater than 0 from -infinity until -3 union 2 to infinity. F prime of x greater than 0 means f prime of x will be above the x-axis. So from -infinity until 3, we sketch above the x-axis. From 2 to infinity, also above the x-axis. Then we look at where f prime of x is less than 0, or f prime of x is negative. That happens when f of x is decreasing. So look at our f of x graph and see where the f of x is decreasing. That's from -3 until -3 until 2. So f prime of x is less than 0 on the interval from -3 till 2. F prime of x less than 0 is below the x-axis. So graphing f prime below the x-axis from -3 to 2. In our next problem, same thing. We'll take a look at where f prime of x is equal to 0. Where are those horizontal tangent lines? That's at 1 and at -1. So at x equals 1 and x equals -1, we'll plot those points on the x-axis for f prime of x. Then we look at where f prime of x is greater than 0. F prime of x is greater than 0 when f of x is increasing. So looking at the f graph, when is the f graph increasing? The f graph is increasing on the interval from 1 until infinity. So f prime of x is greater than 0 on the interval from 1 to infinity. F prime of x greater than 0 will be above the x-axis. So from 1 to infinity, sketch the graph above the x-axis. Then look at where f prime of x is going to be less than 0 is when f of x is decreasing. And f is decreasing on the interval from -infinity until -1, and then from -1 until 1. So f prime of x is less than 0 on the interval from -infinity to -1, union -1 to 1. So we'll graph f prime of x less than 0 below the x-axis from -infinity until -1, and then again from -1 to 1. And you just want to smooth out the curve a little bit so that way it's not such a jagged turn. Taking a look at where f prime of x is equal to 0 again, looking for those horizontal tangent lines. F prime of x is equal to 0 at x is equal to -2, 0, and +2. Plotting those points on our f prime graph on the x-axis. So we want f prime of x to be greater than 0. That occurs when f of x is increasing. Looking at the graph of f of x is increasing from -infinity until -2, then from 0 to 2. So f prime of x is greater than 0 from -infinity to -2, union 0 to 2. So when we sketch the graph of f prime of x, we'll sketch f prime of x greater than 0 above the x-axis on that interval from -infinity to -2, and again on the interval from 0 to 2. Then we'll look at where f prime of x is less than 0. That occurs when f is decreasing. So looking at your f of x graph, looking where the f of x is decreasing, that's on the interval from -2 to 0, and the interval from 2 to infinity. So f prime of x is less than 0 on the interval from -2 to 0, union 2 to infinity. So we'll sketch the graph f prime less than 0 below the x-axis from -2 to 0, and then from 2 to infinity. f prime of x is equal to 0 at x is equal to 0. There's a horizontal tangent line. So we plot that point at 0. F prime of x is greater than 0 is when f of x is increasing. And f of x is increasing from negative infinity until 0. So f prime of x is greater than 0 on the interval from negative infinity to 0. What you also want to note is as x goes towards negative infinity, the graph seems to level off, the f of x graph. So notice that the slopes of f of x seem to approach 0. The slopes are becoming horizontal. So as you sketch the graph of f prime of x, you'll be sketching in the positive section, but also approaching 0 as x goes towards negative infinity. Now we'll look at where f prime of x is less than 0, and that occurs when f is decreasing. And f is decreasing on the interval from 0 to infinity. So f prime of x is less than 0 on that interval from 0 to infinity. Also, again, notice those slopes as we go towards infinity. As x goes towards infinity, the slopes are becoming horizontal again. So when we sketch f prime of x less than 0, again below the x-axis, but then approaching 0 as x goes towards infinity. So look at where f prime of x is equal to 0. That occurs at the horizontal tangent lines located at 3, 2, x equals 1, x equals 0, x equals negative 1, and x equals negative 3. So f prime of x is equal to 0 at x is equal to negative 3, negative 1, 1, 2, and 3. We'll plot each of those points on our f prime graph. Then we'll look at where f prime of x is greater than 0. That occurs when f of x is increasing. F of x is increasing on the interval from negative infinity until negative 3, from negative 1 until 0, from 1 till 2, and then again from 3 to infinity. So f prime of x is greater than 0 on the interval from negative infinity to negative 3, union negative 1 to 0, union 1 to 2, union 3 to infinity. So we'll sketch the graph of f prime of x above the x-axis on the interval from negative infinity to negative 3, from negative 1 to 0, from 1 to 2, and from 3 to infinity. Then we'll look at where f prime of x is less than 0. That occurs when f of x is decreasing. And f of x is decreasing on the intervals from negative 3 to negative 1, from 0 to 1, and from 2 to 3. So f prime of x is less than 0 on the interval from negative 3 to negative 1, union 0 to 1, union 2 to 3. So we'll sketch the graph of f prime of x less than 0 below the x-axis, from negative 3 to negative 1, from 0 to 1, and from 2 to 3. So we want to look at where f prime of x is equal to 0, but f prime of x in this picture does not equal 0 for any value of x. But also notice that f prime of x does not exist at x is equal to negative 3 and x equals 3. So I also want to look at f prime of x is greater than 0, which occurs when f of x is increasing. And f of x is increasing on the interval from negative infinity to negative 3, and from 3 to infinity. So f prime of x is greater than 0 on the interval from negative infinity to negative 3, union 3 to infinity. And also notice that f prime of x not only is greater than 0 on those intervals, but it is a constant slope. So the slope is constantly the same on that interval. So when we sketch the graph of f prime of x, not only will we sketch f prime of x greater than 0, but we'll have the exact same slope, the exact same number in the interval from negative infinity to negative 3 and from 3 to infinity. Then looking where f prime of x is less than 0, that occurs when f is decreasing, and f is decreasing on the interval from negative 3 to 3. So f prime of x is less than 0 on the interval from negative 3 to 3. And also again, notice that f prime of x is again constant. The slope of f is constant on that interval from negative 3 to 3. So when we sketch a graph of f prime of x from negative 3 to 3, go ahead and graph that with a constant slope.